Okay, welcome. Sorry about that. The mic's kind of high, I'm short. So, my name's Lawrence. I think I met everyone. If I didn't meet you, please introduce yourself to me later. I'd love to meet everybody here. I'd like to introduce Sally Johnson. She's an MBA PMP. She's the one who drug me into this. At the first Baton Rouge meeting we had, I mentioned to Drew about a Lafayette chapter, and he said, you need to talk to Sally. So I got directed to her, and we've been working together ever since, and she's a great asset to have around. She works at the campus in informatics. She is a PMP as well, so if you have any PMP application questions, feel free to ask her, or me, or Drew, or anyone that has a PMP. We'd be glad to help you. So Sally, I'm gonna, did I introduce you enough?
I think so. Restrooms.
Oh, restrooms. Everybody know where the restroom's at? No? Straight down the hall. You have to forgive us, or me, because I'm not familiar with the smoking arrangements here. So if you do smoke, I don't know where you go at. I think it's just out in the parking lot, but I don't know where it's at. Sorry for not knowing that. Out of the parking lot.
25 feet.
From the door. Away from the door, and not by the little Sentra. Anyway, Sally?
Oh, okay. We want to thank AOC Community Media today for taping our event. And also, since they will be taping, if you guys could put your phones on silent, that would just help with the recording. And I want to thank two people before we get started. Of course, one is AOC for coming to do this on a volunteer basis. And also I want to thank Dr. Henry Chu, who is the interim director of our building here and also of the Informatics Research Institute. He's the executive director. I'm probably messing that up a little bit, but I apologize, Dr. Chu. But he has graciously let us use this room not only tonight, but also for our monthly meetings until the end of the year. By that time, hopefully, we will have identified a restaurant where we can have our meetings and have like a dinner meeting with a presenter. But at this time, we're still looking. So if you know of a place that would be ideal for this, about this size group for a dinner meeting that has AV equipment, just let us know. Thank you.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry. Where are we at?
You're going to introduce me. You did. You already introduced me, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I'd
So
like
I need to introduce Lawrence.
No, that's
So-
good. I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
So, I'd like to introduce Drew Blanchard from the Baton Rouge chapter. He's the president of the Baton Rouge chapter of PMI, and one of the reasons we're here. So, when I became a PMP, I was a member of PMI first and never went to the meetings. I'm from Lafayette, so I'll tell you my sob story. I live in Church Point. I work in Gramercy. If you don't know, it's 124 miles from my door to that door every day, one way and back, right? So I went to the PMI meeting, which I have the liberty of doing because I'm in Baton Rouge, but I'm interested in doing a chapter here, and that's why we're here, because Drew is assisting us in reaching out to the community that needs the benefits from the Baton Rouge PMI chapter. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Drew Blanchard.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Very, very large group. I'm very excited about the progress that we've made in such a short time. We've talked about having a Lafayette venue for quite a while. Had a couple of pilots even a few years ago where a few people would show up, never really got any traction. So I think it's a credit to Sally and Lawrence, the hard work that they've done. And I think it's obvious that we have some momentum. So hopefully we'll have these meetings regularly. Something you can count on as being in the Lafayette community or surrounding area. Also, if you ever make it over to Baton Rouge, certainly you can have PDUs in Baton Rouge, PDUs in Lafayette, do some catch up, get 3 instead of 1.5, and be in good shape. I've been a member of PMI for about 10 years now, and been on the board of Baton Rouge for going on 8, so it's been quite a while. Second term as president, and you know, it's as being a part of Baton Rouge, I hear a lot of stories about people driving in from Orange, Texas, and Lake Charles and Alexandria. So I think this will be a very good option for those around that they can take advantage of. So this is a Lafayette Venue. It's part of the PMI Baton Rouge chapter, but shouldn't discourage anybody. If you're a member of the Baton Rouge, there's also chapters in Greater New Orleans and Northern Louisiana. And I believe the two closest ones in Texas are Galveston and Houston. So trying to have something a little bit more centrally located. If you're a member of PMI Baton Rouge, of course, automatically you're invited to the Lafayette venues. Anybody else you know that might be interested, please spread the word. Obviously, guests are welcome. We'll expand the space as necessary to attract more people. Certainly anyone's invited to join our chapter, Baton Rouge chapter, and then attend Baton Rouge meetings and Lafayette venue meetings, and we'll be glad to have everybody. I think I've met most people as well, but if I haven't met you, please come and say hi. We'd love to see you here next month or see you later in Baton Rouge. So thanks for coming. Or both. I'd like to introduce our VP of Professional Development, Tanya Boyd.
Hello. I'm really excited to be here tonight from Baton Rouge and just see how good of an attendance that both Sally and Lawrence have done an excellent job reaching out to y'all and getting y'all to attend. So thank you for being here tonight. For those of you, and I know I was checking in people at the door, for those of you that do have your project management certification, there's the word I'm looking for, I will be issuing the professional development units tomorrow morning. It's going to count for 1.5 PDUs in the technical triangle. For those of you that don't have the PMP, but maybe you're working towards that, we have a certificate that we can give you. So those have to wind up doing the self-reporting, but if you are working towards getting your hours to sit for your examination, we do have something that we can give you for that to be able to self-report. So thank y'all all for being here.
Thank you. Tanya's the face. When you walk in, she's at the sign-in, so Tanya's going to be there.
I'm not always good at speaking.
She's a great speaker, so. Thanks for coming, both of you. I want to thank you both for coming tonight. It was great for you to get from Baton Rouge to get over here. Welcome to Louisiana. Sorry, that was all pun intended. Okay, that's it. We don't have any other board members here, right? Are there any new PMI credential holders here? New being last month, couple months ago, recent certification. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Congratulations. That's not an easy test. We all know that, so it's not easy. Congratulations on that task. That was very hard. I don't know how much studying you guys did. Another story. I'm going to Baton Rouge. I'm driving to Baton Rouge to take my PMI for the first time. My stepmom calls me. No, I'm sorry. My dad has problems, and he was going to dialysis 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I drive 124 miles to work one way. So my dad calls me Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to talk to me, He was my best friend. And Friday morning, September 28th, I was set. I studied all night. I slept in late. I didn't answer my dad's call. At 5:30 in the morning, he would call me. At 5:30 every morning, he would call me Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He said, "Son, my heart doesn't feel right. I'm going to a new heart doctor Monday." I didn't answer that call because I was sleeping. At 7 o'clock, my stepmom called me. My dad died. I don't remember sitting in front of that screen taking that test. And when I retook it, I was there for the entire time, and I aced it. But I didn't realize in my subconscious mind, I'm a strong person in my mind, right? But when I sat in front of that screen, my mind was so gone because of that. I don't remember being there. And when I took the test the second time, it was hard for me, but it was hard all the same. But it was a lot harder for me the first time. So congratulations to you. I'm sorry I told you all that. Useless information, forget it.
Very good. Thank you all. I know that took a little bit of time, but since this is our first meeting, it was nice to get to know everyone. I'm going to introduce Casey now. She's our speaker. Casey serves as a manager in information technology at Schumacher Clinical Partners, where she started her career in 2005. Casey has explored human resources, communications, and ultimately found her work home in information technology with program management and managerial responsibilities. Please help me welcome Casey.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I don't disappoint y'all. I've never been to one of the Baton Rouge meetings, so I don't know exactly what any of your expectations are. First, thanks to Jonathan Carey. He pushed me to get my project management license. I'm very grateful for it. At the time, I questioned his sanity as well as mine, but now I'm very thankful that he afforded me the opportunity and has allowed me to grow in the position that I'm currently in. So as Sally said, a little bit about me. I started with Schumacher Clinical Partners during my undergrad studies, just doing clerical work in human resources. I then grew into a communications role for a couple of years and decided that that really wasn't for me. Then JC adopted me into the IT family and I became a project manager. Over the years, I'm sure a lot of you have heard in the news of Schumacher Clinical Partners acquiring other firms. One of those being Hospital Physician Partners out of Hollywood, Florida, and a second one being Legacy ECI out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was asked if I would be the program manager for the merger and acquisition project there, which was very intimidating, but at the same time was a very rewarding experience for me. I learned a lot. It allowed me to grow with the organization, and I feel that I can be a better manager in the position that I'm in now because I've seen different aspects of the organization as well as different aspects within our healthcare realm. So what we'll review today is some information about contract management, and then I think towards the end of the presentation, we will focus on merger and acquisitions and contract management within that realm. So we'll go over generally what it is, the impact that contract management has to the organization, how merger and acquisitions impact that, present some challenges, and then ultimately we'll end with lessons learned and some recommendations from the processes that we've gone through and the struggles that I've faced as we've gone through those mergers and acquisitions. So what is contract management? Contract management, by definition, is developing and controlling the life cycle of a contract from initialization to the termination through the systematic and methodic coordination of resources and processes useful for risk control and financial optimization. So in a nutshell, you identify a need for something. Once that need is identified, you have that creation aspect done. You then reach out, you get RFPs, you get all of your information from your potential vendors, and you enter into the negotiation phase. As you get into the negotiation phase, that's the gray area where you're back and forth with the different vendors trying to figure out exactly who you're going to choose. Once you choose a vendor, you go to the validation phase where you review the contract, you know exactly what you're getting, the vendor knows exactly what you're asking for. So once everything's agreed upon, you then enter into an execution phase. This is where the magic happens. The magic happens whenever you're in execution and you're actually working toward getting the product that you've requested or whatever result it is you want out of the deal between you and the vendor. Some contracts have a specified date range with them. Some contracts can be automatically renewed. Some of them need to have closure dates. So with that definition, moving on, let's look at different contract types that you can enter into. So there are subcontract types of each of these, but I kept it high level just for this presentation. And the first one we'll talk about is a fixed price contract. So in this contract, it's exactly what it says. Prices are fixed. The scope is well defined or the product is well defined. There's no fluctuation in the cost of that contract. There are pros and cons for both the buyer and the seller. For the buyer, the pro is there's no cost overruns because, as we said, it's fixed. The con is that generally you have a higher cost whenever you enter into a contract like this. From the seller perspective, the pro is there's no loss of material costs. And then from a con perspective, there's a risk of loss on service. So then we jump to cost reimbursable contracts. There's reimbursement for actual costs plus profit associated with these contracts. For these, the pro for the buyer, there's no cost overrun here. There's just costs on materials. For a con, there's higher initial costs whenever you enter into the actual contract. For the seller, it's, again, a very well-defined product, so there's very little to no loss on material costs. From a con's perspective, the risk of loss on service only. And last but not least, the one we'll talk about is time and materials. So here, it's cost of supplies plus compensation for time. Okay, I didn't know if that was the mic or if that was something else. Generally, in time and material contracts, your scope is very undefined. And because your scope is undefined, you go through the process of just paying out time and materials to most likely figure out exactly what your scope is, and then to actually get the product or the service that you want from that. So people often say, whose responsibility is it to manage a contract? Well, that differs. It depends what industry you're in. It depends on your specific organization. But according to Aptus and the 2016 survey, because the 2017 survey has not yet been released, it is 35% a legal professional's responsibility, 45% the business responsibility, and 20% are kind of in the gray area. They're unsure where that responsibility falls. But so remember this slide, because as we get to toward the end of the presentation, we'll circle back to it and have some discussions around why those percentages are where they are. So what is the organizational impact due to contracts? Contracts can be used for many different things. Some people use contracts for resources, like your tech system guys. We do a lot of work with you guys. It could be supplemental team members. It could be subject matter experts that you need to come in where you maybe don't have the knowledge of a specific process or something, and they have resources that do have that. You can also use contracts from an application perspective. Organizations that you all work for, the HR systems, any workflow systems, Microsoft Office. There is a contract out there that you may not be managing or be aware of, but someone is managing a contract for your organization to have access to those applications and to use them on a daily basis. Something as simple as building management from a services aspect, or even the coffee supplier. God forbid, corporate offices don't have coffee, especially in the IT world. I think our shop would crash. We would have no productivity. And then also there's infrastructure. There could be equipment, there could be servers, there could be routers that are needed for all of your networking capabilities. So these are all just general items. There's many, many more ideas and types of products that people can engage in contracts with. So moving on to mergers and acquisitions. A lot of times mergers and acquisitions are a blended term, and it really should not be a blended term. They are two completely separate things. A merger is a legal consolidation of two entities into one. An acquisition is where one entity takes ownership of another entity's stock, equity, interest, or assets. So while people say, yeah, there was an M&A, well, no, not really. There was either a merger or there was an acquisition. Maybe it's a place where you have to play nice, so you call it an M&A just because it has more of a positive feeling whenever you're communicating that out to the public as well as the people that it was impacting. I've always been on the side of the situation where the company I work for was acquiring another company. I've managed people that were on the other side of the situation. And upon exit interviews, they've shared information with me that leads me even more to believe that's why people call it mergers and acquisitions. It's more, it feels better whenever you say that instead of saying, you know, I work for a company that got acquired by company X. Oh, we merged. We're one company now. So it's words and how you choose to do that. So during every merger and acquisition, there's due diligence processes that happen. And during those due diligence processes, there's many, many different data captures and things that happen. I've highlighted 3 on the screen, 1 being technology and intellectual property, 2 being material contracts, and 3 being an online data room. I'm specifically interested in technology and intellectual property just because that's where my job role is. So I'll kind of go down to the material contracts. As you're going through the due diligence process, it's very important to know what contracts you have in place. Because you may be, whenever there was the acquisition or the merger, you most likely have a similar business. You have a similar business structure, but you'll have different contracts, you'll have different vendors that do basically the same thing. This is where the online data room becomes vital for mergers and acquisitions. At this point, any information that you need regarding the merger and acquisition should be in this online data room. We've had, with the past 2 mergers and acquisitions, a folder specifically for contracts in the data room. This was very easy because as soon as we needed to know information about a contract, we could go to that specific folder, get the contract that we needed, and get any specific information about that contract out of there. So as we move on, what are the challenges with integration? It's hard enough having one organization and managing the people, processes, and technology of a single organization, much less adding a second organization into the mix. So when you add that second organization in, now you have 2 sets of everything that you have to look at. So first, from the people aspect, you have 2 companies with a solid employee base. Upon the merger or acquisition, there's going to be some employees that's going to separate from the organization. Some may be voluntary, some may be involuntary. Those are all situations that you have to account for. You'll also have, within the organization that was acquired, subject matter experts. You want to keep those people because you need those people. We've learned that the hard way from one of the integrations. You need those people, you need them to help you get through the integration so that you can stabilize as an organization. And then not last, but the last one that I'll focus on in this area is relationship management. So it's not only relationship management with your vendors, with your contractors. As you're going through the acquisition, it's important to maintain those relationships with employees. Oftentimes there's management changes that may be forced upon them. You have situations where people that were managers are no longer managers and now report to someone else whenever that's something that they've been doing, something they hold close to their heart. So you have to maintain that people realm, and you have to do it in both the acquiring and acquired organizations at the same time. So next, looking at processes. You have to gather requirements for all of those processes. It's virtually like starting a whole new project all over again, because documentation that may have been done on those processes 10 years ago may not be valid anymore, and it may not have been updated. While most of this information should be in the online data room, there's always a chance that it was not put in there, or, as I said, the information was not updated when it was put in there. There's going to be silos of information. So you'll have your acquiring company that has their silos of information. They know how everything works on their side. And then you'll have the other side of the equation, the acquired company, which will be in the same situation. You have to have an understanding of that. Hopefully, they're pretty close and you can work very easily and merge those 2 together. But there's also an understanding of dependencies. One example that I have from this is one of the acquisitions, the legacy ECI acquisition that we went through. Both organizations did the exact same thing. We staffed and managed emergency departments and hospitalist medicine. Well, one thing that the organization we acquired did was also provide managed services, which is not a service line that we were in. Well, little did we know that they had dependencies within processes that sent data to more than one place. whereas we have one repository where all of our data goes. So knowing those processes for both sides, being able to identify the dependencies for that, and then know what the risks are if something breaks for that is also very important. And then when you're looking at contract management, you have to be able to identify efficiencies. So just because the acquiring organization is acquiring the next organization doesn't mean that their practices and their processes are better. There always needs to be that exercise that you go through with that evaluation, and you identify where those efficiencies are. If it's on the side of the company that's being acquired, it's okay to adopt those practices. It's okay to rebuild your systems or your processes if you need to, and it'll create efficiencies within your organization. And the last piece is technology. So we have third-party vendors, we have suppliers. Again, you're going to have two of everything, because if you're in a different geographical area, well, you have different vendors that approach you. So it's at that point of going back to identifying the efficiencies and where are they and how can you get the most bang for your buck with that. So now a decision has to be made, and this plays into your integration strategy. Do you want to maintain two postures, support two different environments, or do you want to combine into one posture and integrate into one set of processes and technology? You'll most likely be keeping at least some of the people if you choose the second option. If the first option is chosen, you'll have to most likely keep all of the people from both organizations just to sustain business. So how are those decisions made? Generally, they're synergy targets that are presented by the executive committee to the individuals at the lower levels actually working toward the integration. Well, the definition of synergy target is the value and performance of two companies combined will be greater than the sum of the separate individual parts. Obviously, you want to have greater profit and you want to have greater revenue, but what you don't want to do is double your budget. And if you maintain both sides and support both postures, you're going to double your budget, if not triple it, depending on the market and the pricing strategies that are in place. So this is where the complexity comes in. You have to meet the synergies, you have to sustain business, and you have to also continue to onboard business as you're moving through the merger and acquisition. So as you're maintaining and sustaining business, your contracts are generally in an execution state where things are blowing and going, everybody's getting their job done, but you have important decisions to make. Is it an aspect of we want to renew this contract? Do we want to keep this vendor? Or do we want to cancel this contract? Do we want to terminate it? So the important considerations for us to look at here are, first, from the business aspect. What's in that contract? Have you reviewed that contract with a fine-tooth comb and made sure that all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed? So whether you have chosen to stay with the acquiring company's contract or you've chosen to go with the acquired company's contract, you have to look at this and ensure that everything you need is covered. Are there shared suppliers? Is there a potential that you have a supplier offering one service, the acquired firm's using that same supplier but for a different service? If you find yourself in a situation like that, it may behoove you to go back to that negotiation phase and try to merge those two contracts. Customer service is very important in our industry. So which contract provides you better customer service? Which supports you better as an organization? And if you're merging two organizations, which one is more stable and which one is more scalable? Because we can't stick with a contract that can only sustain the business that we have now if we're double or tripling the business that we have coming into the organization. So those are things from the business aspect. Looking at it from the legal aspect, there's a lot of legal jargon in contracts that I'll read through it and I have no clue what it says. I have a team of people that I rely on specifically for that now. We'll get a little deeper into that whenever we get to the lessons learned aspect. But we need those individuals to review the contract. We need to know what's the terms of those contracts. What happens if we breach that contract? Do we have to give them a 90-day notice? Is it going to be automatically renewed? Those are all things that are not necessarily addressed within the due diligence at the executive level, but have to be addressed within the due diligence at the lower management level as you're going through the integration processes. So now moving on to the lessons learned and recommendations area. Here, we'll discuss some key points. One, figuring out what is in the contract. Who should do that? Legal should not do that because legal does not know what you need in that contract. They don't necessarily know exactly what product you are requesting, what service you're requesting, but that contract does need to be reviewed. And this is referencing back to the slide that I showed earlier where it was the breakout of does legal own the responsibility, does the business own it, or are you unsure about it? So specifically for the contract review, that needs to fall with the contract owner or the business process owner over that. Second to that is any hidden contracts. So generally when you're doing your due diligence and they enter data into the online data store, they get a dump from the accounting system with every vendor that they've paid out, which is great, but what happens if there's something that someone purchased on their credit card and they just expense? Well, you don't have that anymore. It's not captured in your budget. It's not captured in any of your documentation. So one issue that we ran into with one of our integrations, they had services that converted PDF documents to TIFF images. And as some of you in here know, our imaging repository requires that those documents be in a TIFF format to enter into the system. Well, one day we were getting so many errors, we could not figure out what was going on, why is everything blowing up? After about 2 days of researching the issue, we get a phone call from a vendor. Hi, this is so-and-so from Metalisoft. Your contract's termed. We didn't get payment for the contract, so, we're trying to figure out, do you want to renew? Do you not want to renew? What's going on? So we go back to the online data room. We look through everything. Again, there's no contract for this one vendor. Now we have to go back, basically, to the negotiation phase. You breached contract. You're no longer grandfathered in to the lower pricing levels that were entered into 10 years ago. The market has grown. Prices are much higher than they were before. So now you're increasing your budget. You have to get this back up because you're going to be production down without this application running. So that was directly impacted me outside of my program management from the merger and acquisition because that was specifically my department that manages that. So it was quite a task getting that paid quickly. I'm sure many of you know going through the AP systems, getting all of those requisitions submitted, getting them approved is not a fast task to get done. Even if you can have your VP or your CIO expedited, it still takes time for it to happen. So another thing is transitioning contact information. So whenever the acquired company gets integrated with the acquiring company, oftentimes people from the acquired company are listed as the contact on the contracts. So instead of them going directly to accounts payable, they would go to that contact and say, your contract is up for renewal. Are you renewing it? Are you not? What's going on with that? Well, again, we got burned in this situation because we had individuals who stayed with the organization after the acquisition and then left. Well, they left. We didn't know the terms of the contract at the time. The contract renewal documentation was going to that individual's email. They were getting a bounce back because that email was no longer active, but they weren't bothering to reach out to anyone else with the organization to try and figure out who is it that I need to contact to figure out if we're going to renew this or we're going to close this or how are we going to proceed, if we will proceed. So we had to go through the processes again. Their budget went up because our contract was breached, and we had to go through the whole thing again. That one ended up In that situation, the cost was so high for us to re-enter into a contract there, we went and built a custom solution in-house just because the ROI was much cheaper for us to do that as opposed to outsourcing that. So you see all of those fall with the contract owner or the process owner. The last one here is legal counsel. So for the terms of the agreement, as I've said, there's so much legal jargon in there, unless if you understand that language, it's like reading Greek whenever I look at the contract. So I have a team that I rely on very heavily now to review all of my contracts, to let me know what's their terms, what's our renewal policies with them, and then if there's any questions within the contract about the services or anything that's provided, I make sure to keep my legal counsel looped in on all of those communications, just so that if anything comes back, they know exactly what was going on, exactly where we stand with that organization, and can help me to move forward with that. So a couple of recommendations, I guess, from this point. One thing that we've learned is there needs to be a dedicated resource for contract management. Specifically within IT, where I work, we have a dedicated resource that her primary job is to manage our contracts. This is a shell of the information that we use, that we keep a manual record of in an Excel document. Which group is in charge of that contract? Which department within IT is that? What is the spend category for that? Is it maintenance? Is it SaaS? Is it licensing? Is it equipment? What is it? Who's the supplier of that? Not only do we get the supplier, but we also see, as you go down, we get the account rep for there. We have what the expiration date is. So the expiration date and the contract terms, as you go to the right of the screen, all comes from legal. Everything else generally comes from the business owner of that contract. Because in our organization's eyes, it's my responsibility to manage the vendors that I interact with, that my systems rely on for our processes to continue day to day. One final thing is an application where all of this information can be loaded. So if you capture all of this information in an Excel spreadsheet, once you have it in there, you can do a data load and get it all in an application. We've started this process, we've entered data, we've not kept data updated. I think it's the same story with a lot of people that I've talked to. They're like, oh yeah, we started it, we did it, but we just kind of let it, fall off the face of the earth. So one thing that we're doing right now is going through an exercise where we have all of our legacy organization contracts, all of our contracts from any of the companies that we've acquired, and we're making sure we have all of that listed out. And then in addition to having all of that listed out, there's going to be a data load into Salesforce, which is the application that we use just because we use Salesforce for everything at Schumacher. And this is going to allow us to set up alerts within our system. So one of the fields, probably kind of small for all of you, but one of the things that you can see there is what the expiration date of that contract is. And we can set parameters to notify us within certain time periods of that expiration date so that we can circle back with legal counsel, review everything in the contract, also review what is the content of that contract. Do we need to change anything in that contract, or are we good with what we have, and can we just automatically renew from that perspective? And I think I talked a little bit too quickly. So summing it up, this is just my references, but no problem.
And at this time, I want to give Casey a gift. It's 2 project management books from PMI.org and a thank you card.
Sally.
So
You
thank you
didn't
so
have
much
to.
for being our
No
first
problem.
speaker. Also, at this time, we're going to have a drawing. I've got more books. So, so if I could pick, how about Dr. Chu? Can you pick a number between what, Tanya, what should we?
Between 1 and 37.
1 and 37.
1.
1, okay.
And that would be Drew Blanchard.
Oh. Pick another one, okay. Pick another number? Or, it was our president, and he's declined, so.
True, pick a number.
2? Okay.
I can go all night.
The person did not show up, so. Okay, not 16 or 17 even.
Okay.
Somebody said 16.
16. Don't pick.
Nah, pick the exact number.
15 or 17.
19. No shows.
18 is Sheila Johnson.
Okay. And I'll let you pick another number.
28.
28, okay.
28 is Ambrose. Okay.
Ambrose. Good catch.
And the giveaway is something I started a long time ago when I was with the board in Baton Rouge, at the Baton Rouge chapter, so I'd like to continue that. So every month, you have a chance of winning a book. So, let's see, I want to announce what the next the next Lafayette meeting will be. It's gonna be, and I think I have it on your agendas, but it's gonna be on August 28th, a Tuesday, and it's gonna be in this same building at about the same time. And our speaker's gonna be Catherine Blackburn. She got married recently, and I don't remember her new married name, but we'll say Catherine Blackburn. Her LinkedIn still says Catherine. And she's gonna talk about an intro to project management. But she's gonna be looking at the principles that are in the PMBOK. I don't know if everybody knows what the PMBOK is, but it's the project management body of knowledge. It's actually kind of like the Bible for project managers. They're the standards for project management. And she's going to talk about how to put those principles in the PMBOK into day-to-day practical practice. And so that's what her talk's going to be about next month. So, and also the next Baton Rouge meeting, if anybody wants to drive over the bridge to go to Baton Rouge, their meeting is going to be on August 20th. It's a Monday, right? And Josh Ryan will talk on effective communication. And both of those are eligible for the 1.5 PDU educational units. Also, I think a lot of you guys got an online survey. We're trying to find out what is the best day of the week and to have, or week of the month to have our meetings. So if you haven't filled out the survey, please try to do so. I know there's quite a few, 5 or 6 people that have filled it out already, and it's going to be very helpful. Also, those that I might not have sent the survey to, since you registered, I'll grab your emails and I'll send you a survey also. And if you could, that would be great. I think, the only other thing I have before we adjourn, I know we're a little bit early, is on the table over there, I have, if anybody is studying, I think there was 1 or 2 of you guys that were studying or getting ready to study for the PMP. And I have a list of all of the boot camps, the PMP prep boot camps. They'll be happening in our area, both in Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and in New Orleans. So there's some coming up next month, the next couple months. So if you want to know where they're at locally, just take one of those slips of paper. And I think that's it. I thank you guys for coming from my heart. I'm very grateful that everybody came, and I hope it was informative, and hope to see you back and help us spread the word. And we'll try to have quality programs every month for you.
So Sally, before we break away,
Yes.
don't forget that did we have the certification types that you printed up a paper of the certification types? So there's more than just project management professional that PMI offers. I'll just go right here. So Sally put together a list of other opportunities that PMI puts out. So if you're interested in other business analytics or estimating, costing, take a look at this. There may be something that interests you besides PMP. I promote PMP because I'm a PMP, but I was looking at agile project management because it seems to be the moving wave. Also, if you join the PMI chapter or the PMI group, you get a free copy of the PMBOK. Woo! We like free stuff, right? So you get a free copy of the 6th edition PMBOK, which is agile now. The PMI went to the more agile-based approach in March this year. So if you have an old PMBOK that's 5th edition, chunk it. Put it on the shelf, get the 6th edition. Join PMI. I'd hope you join the Baton Rouge PMI chapter. As Sally's heart is with this, mine is too. I anticipate this to grow, and just like church, if you bring the most visitors with you next weekend, we'll give you a lollipop. So bring some visitors with you that might be interested in PMI and PMP and join the group. And again, take advantage of the 3 PDUs per month, which I will do. I'll go to Baton Rouge and come here and get 3 PDUs a month. So it's helpful. It's enjoyable too.
So I'm gonna put these right on the end here, if you want the boot camp stuff and the different certifications. And also, there's tons of food left. I overestimated or underestimated there. And take some home